On this episode of A State of Control, we talk about the idea of virtualized control. What is the impact going to be on the audiovisual industry? How do service providers need to prepare? And you know what? Programmers are still valuable. All that and more on A State of Control.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
A State of Control.
A State of Control, episode 46, Virtualized Control.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Extron Electronics.
Welcome to A State of Control, an AVNation podcast that focuses on the control, programming, and automation aspects of the audiovisual industry. My name's Steve Greenblatt. I'm your host. Thanks for joining us. We have a pretty exciting and interesting show planned for today. We're going to be talking about virtualized control. What that is and where we're going with it, we'll touch on. But before that, let's talk about who our guests are today. First, we'll start with my partner at A State of Control. He is Uncle Richie. Everybody knows him as Uncle Richie. Rich Fregosa. How are you, Rich?
I'm good. Everybody's favorite Uncle Richie's here, and happy to be here and enjoying some stepping up into summer pretty soon, and excitement, I guess, building up for InfoCom.
Very nice. And next, a regular here on State of Control. He's a friend and a great contributor. His name is Dave Hatz from AVI Systems. How are you, Dave?
Hey, doing good. Thanks for having me, bud.
Thanks for joining us. And last but not least, he's a listener, but first time on the show. His name is Ryan Engels. He is a technology manager at Ithaca College. Thanks for joining us, Ryan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Glad you can make it. So we often discuss a lot of evergreen topics on the show. We talk about everything from how to define a scope of work and how to troubleshoot and what's good code writing practices. Today, we're going to kind of delve into where things are headed, and we're going to talk about a trend that's been surfacing a bit as of late, and that's the idea of virtualized control. What that is the idea that we're either using a server that's local or in the cloud that becomes your hub for control. It's a bit different than what's been done in the past, where you've had localized control processors. But this is something that is becoming not only asked for, but also a lot of manufacturers are jumping on board to provide those types of solutions. So with that said, Rich, I'll start with you. What about this concept is really appealing, and why do we see things heading that way?
Well, I think, we've talked about this over and over, in that, in the beginning of the tech industry, the AV side of things has always been about 15 to 20 years behind the curve from the tech industry. For a long period of time, probably up until about the last 5 years. And in the last 5 years, that gap is shrinking very quickly at an exponential rate. And what's happening is that, as we're seeing again, huge transitions in the IT and the tech industry. Virtualization is now becoming something that people are, since tech managers and manufacturers and other companies are looking at this, they're saying, well, of course, obviously from the control standards, it's becoming a natural evolution. I mean, you really can't look at anything now at this point that isn't being virtualized in the IT world. I mean, you're looking at servers, you're looking at switches. These are all of these items, and if you think about it, the power consumption, the physical space. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why it makes natural sense. But more importantly, again, it's coming from the outside in. We were in this bubble for so long because we were, an industry unto ourselves. Now that we're becoming more and more a sector of the tech industry, we have to play a lot better in the sandbox. And so that's exactly what we're seeing, is that companies are having to adapt and evolve much faster than they have in the history of their lifetimes as a manufacturer. Because if not, somebody else is going to step in and take that over. So I think that right now, it's a good thing. There's no choice. They're forced to up their game to match what's being expected. And I think it's a realistic expectation at this point.
So, Dave, what Rich is saying, that we're feeling the pressure from IT, is this enough of a reason for us to go down this route, or is this something that we have to be cautious of and understand what are the consequences of really going from localized processors to more of a virtualized solution?
Well, I think it's like most things. We don't want to necessarily just do it just for the sake of virtualizing our control. But if you think about it, control systems, again, since the beginning of time, it's software. Whether it's software that lives in a black box that has RS-232 ports and IR ports and relay ports on it, or it's software that lives on a virtualized server somewhere and talks to other I/O components, it's still really all about that software that enables us to deliver the experience that we want to for our end clients. And so, I look at it as a tremendous opportunity, because in many cases, the virtualized ecosystem, it provides an architecture that lets us be more scalable. It lets us adapt the way we're writing our code and the tools we're using to write our code many times into a more modern environment, as Rich was saying. And it opens up the realm of possibility to where, we can more efficiently deliver what I'll say is that same result to the end user using the right tools at the right time. And so it's not a one size fits all. We're not going to necessarily go, if I'm tasked with building one huddle room in the corner of a building, I'm probably not going to go and turn to a virtualized control system every time, today at least, because of the work that goes into it. Down the road, that might change. My statement might change. Today, I may go find a purpose-built box. Maybe I'll find a keypad that has control built into it, and that fits my need. But it's about finding the right tool at the right time. And virtualizing your control certainly has a lot of benefits that, many times it's going to turn into the right tool.
So Ryan, I'll head over to you. Not only are you technology manager and a client to just from our perspective as being service providers, but also you have an IT background.
Yeah.
What's appealing about the solution, and how do you see this fit into how do you see this fitting the needs of your users?
So as being an IT manager and now a AV technology manager, I definitely have seen both sides. Technology just continues to march along at this incredibly rapid pace, and we're essentially being asked to try to replace this technology or keep it up to date as well as possible, while expected to stick within 6 to 8 year replacement timeframes on these control processors and other gear. And I think, like Rich was saying, this is just going to get to a point where these two, the expectations of IT and what we can actually provide come to a head. It was even 3 or 4 years ago where I would see on CIO level resumes and stuff how many servers they virtualized at the last job, right? And I think it's only a matter of time before it starts to sink in that we're in a position with our control processors where IT was with their servers several years ago. And at some point, it makes sense to take the boxes, virtualize them, the scalability, like Dave was saying. We have about 190 classrooms, about 65 meeting spaces on campus. If we can leverage a product where I can essentially copy and paste and just make changes to the endpoints, whether that's IP addresses and talk back to a virtual server along with control over HTML5, I think we'll be in a better place as technology managers to try to respond to this rapid pace of technology growth.
So Dave, I think you touched on some interesting things with regard to software, and based on what Ryan is saying here, is the future for us going to be within what we know of is now these control system environments, or are we just going to be looking at writing software that it can be just about anything, is that a good thing?
Well, I think you're always going to have some level of hand-holding or out-of-the-box functionality, or macro-based, here's the easy button from a vendor, because at the end of the day, our vendors want us to sell their products, and so they're going to package together meaningful options that let you really quickly use their things efficiently. But as an AV programmer, I think we've seen it for the last 5 to 10 years, and we're going to continue to see it, where we're developers of middleware many times. We're not just, when I push this button, I send this string anymore. We're integrating different platforms, different systems together to deliver that experience to the end user, and that's going to nothing but continue and grow. And so, building on a virtualized control system, well, it takes that next step of, I'm in the software domain. And so, yes, I'm still interfacing with hardware at the edges, but I have a more purpose-built software platform to integrate with these other software platforms. That's where we're at, and that's going to continue to be the future without a doubt.
So it sounds like, despite what everybody is thinking, the AV idea of programming is not going away. And so,
it's a matter of, you need to find the most efficient way to deliver the end result to your clients. And whether that's building a single AV template that you repurpose and sell over and over and over again, whether that's you build that in a virtualized environment and you just power on 10 VMs with the same code in it, somebody needs to make that work. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be something in our environment that we as the developers bring extra value versus something that you can go to a box store and just buy off the shelf. There will be options that a client can buy off the shelf, but they're not going to have the features. They're not going to have the complete experience that at the end of the day, our end users are going to realize they want. There's going to be a balance, certainly, but we've got a lot of value yet to give.
I like to hear that. So, Rich, would you agree with that? And how do you think we're going to need to step up our game if this is the trend?
I think it's any company who's in AV programming, as either the core or an offering, is going to be looking at changing their model. And Dave said it perfectly. We're moving into a development world, and what's going to happen is companies that were traditionally, and Ryan said it perfectly just a couple of minutes ago, when a design was happening and a spec was built, it was on a 6 to 8 year time frame, right, for boxes, because that was at the pace where the technology that our industry was offering was moving into basically a version 2 technology, or a 3 series technology, or a X series technology, whatever we wanted to call it, right? And it was probably right at that 8 year mark, we would see that shift, because the processors would change, the microprocessors would change, the software tools would change, everything under the hood would start changing. We're moving at a much faster pace now. And what's happening, and again, speaking from the Resi side, we have a different approach and different challenges. But if you're looking at educational, if you're looking at commercial, if you're looking at government, these are much faster timelines that they're moving on. The expectations are changing because they've seen what happened when you had a 25-year-old, Windows 95 computer that they just spent, $7 million on a contract to keep it running, for another 2 years. It's they've already learned those lessons in the PC and the tech industry, and they are not going to repeat them when it comes down to the control systems and huddle spaces and unified communications and all of these things. They've already said, We've already done it before. We've already seen what happened. We are not going to move to a hardware-specific environment any longer. There's no need. And that's okay. Now, there is always going to be that fine line. There are going to be mission-critical tasks that if you lose your internet connection, that's not going to happen. There are always going to be exceptions to the rule. But, Ryan's situation is a perfect example, right? There's 60-odd class or 100 and something classrooms, right?
About 190 classrooms and 65 meeting space.
All right. Plus or minus 10 are going to be down for whatever reason, right? But those are going to be going. And what's going to happen is that from a programming standpoint, what we've done for the past 25 years, right? We had a hardware unit. We would go ahead and build purpose-built code, and we would bill based on the fact that that thing was going to stay in there and run day in and day out for 4 to 8 years. That's what the billing platform and the cycle was. And by the way, there's no upgrade path. The software doesn't change. The UI doesn't change. This is, you bought it and you drove it off the lot, right? And we are changing from that now. And what's going to happen, and like I said, Dave nailed it, is if you're going to succeed, you need to take a developer mindset. Not only is it from your just the nuts and bolts of your programming, right? Which is scalability. Do you go physical versus virtualized? But your entire billing practice. You are going to have to start moving from here's a scope of work and we're done and shake your hand, Mr. Technology Manager, and I'll see you in 4 years at the next presidential election. No, you're going to be building a licensing program. And what's going to happen is version 1.2.0 is going to come out. And now what's going to happen is you're going to be able to offer 1.2.1 or 1.3.0 to your client base. And they will either choose to upgrade their license with the feature set that you've increased, or they won't because they're happy with where they're at. And that is huge. It is a, I don't use the word paradigm shift because I'm not fond of that phrase to begin with, but it is from a business standpoint. If you have more than a one-off, you need to start looking at changing your entire philosophy on how you offer your services, because people are not going to, companies aren't necessarily going to, just kind of shrug their shoulders and say, yeah, we got to a 4, 5, 6-figure programming bill that's going to come across. And you're going, but gee, I'm doing 1,000 of these things. That's how it works. And they say, no, we'll figure something else out. It doesn't devalue what we provide. It requires us to be a lot more flexible and, like Dave said, to be the middleware. Because again, there is always going to be that glue. We are going to always be that glue, right? The IT professional isn't going to understand the control side of things. They'll have an understanding. They're already busy. So our job is to come in and say, look, there's going to be hiccups. You have a different operating system here. You have 15 different types of switches here. You have a fiber trunk here. You have this here. So what happens is, and like we're looking at in the residential side, becoming the technology advisor for control packet management, right? Because that's what we're moving towards. We're moving away from voltage. We're moving away from, an IR based, or a relay. We're in the packet management business at this point. And what happens now is we've got to be able to say, we can manage these packets to make everybody's lives easier. And there's a fee for it. And this is how our model works. And the model goes up or down or however you do it. So, is the traditional control system is it going to be completely stable? No, there isn't. Because there's always going to be mission critical applications. But the majority of the business, the bread and butter, kind of the stuff that pays your light bill as a company, you've got to start looking at how you are going to create a recurring revenue stream as opposed to, we met our numbers for the year. We're done. Everybody, let's go to Cancun. That's not going to happen.
Yep.
It's just not.
And what Rich is talking about really is the fact that the software we as developers build is what enables our companies to start having the as a service discussion, the AV as a service. And it's a term we're starting to hear more and more. I have no doubt at Infocom it's going to be, touted around a bunch. And a lot of times the first thing that comes to mind in those discussions is, well, how do we sell the equipment? How do they get the equipment? And everyone starts to jump to effectively a lease model where I pay so much per month and I get the functions of an AV room. But what really enables that is the software. Exactly what Rich was saying about the features of, we have the 1.2 version and it does this. And as part of your subscription plan, maybe you have updates on a quarterly basis included, maybe they're an upcharge, but for your monthly fee, you get a set of features. And if you want to pay a little bit more, we'll give you a bigger set of features. We'll give you a nice, a different shiny button, whatever the agreement is. And that's stuff that we as developers are going to be supplying. We're going to provide that value to our companies that can then resell it as a service to all of our end users. And if you think about the scalability of that business model, if we get it right, there's a lot of potential there. And again, it brings that value that we have back to our end users in a way that they can see it. And virtualized control is what makes it scalable, because if we decide we want to go from 10 rooms to 15 rooms, power on some more VMs, yes, put some more hardware in the rooms, but the software is ready for it. Just flip the switch on, build some more virtualized systems to expand next summer. Again, some more in the winter. It gives that path where we stay relevant and we have greater control on the features we're delivering.
And I'm just going to interject real quick, because again, what Dave was just talking about is, if we want a simple lesson, look at the dedicated video conferencing industry.
Yeah.
If you want a lesson on oops, I mean, there's a little device sitting right behind Dave that every month or so, it seems, there's an email that comes out that says, oh, by the way, that new unified communication platform that everybody loves, you can have that too. And yet, that piece of hardware that has been sitting there hasn't changed.
No.
And so all of a sudden, again, you're not going to have the $10,000 ISDN connected camera that was the bread and butter for all of these companies for how long, right?
Yep.
We're talking about now $79 webcam sitting on top of Mac displays like mine.
Well, and Microsoft doesn't even necessarily tell you right away when they upgrade features in Skype for Business. It's part of your O365 subscription. It just comes along. Every Tuesday, you get new features. And you don't necessarily even have an option of them. If you pay the subscription to a certain tier, you just get them. That's the model we're moving towards.
So Ryan's holding up dollar signs saying, I'll buy it now. I'll buy it now.
Exactly.
Why don't you jump in, Ryan, and let us know, are we on target here?
Yeah. Rich and Dave were talking about change. When I first started here at IC, one of the things that I was asked to do was go through our standards, right? And try to come up with templates on what a standard room would look like. And even then, 3 years ago, I thought that this doesn't have to be this way. What I wanted to look even then was more at standard capabilities, right? Not necessarily what box is going to go into this space, or I wanted more flexibility to be able to just deploy a capability, right? And what I'm hoping that this virtualization brings us is, whether I want to put in an Epson, a Panasonic, a Sony, a NEC, it doesn't matter, right? What I can get my hands on, there's still room for trying to get spares and stuff like that. But when technology changes at such a quick, fast pace, I can actually focus more on just maintaining these capabilities in this room, not focusing on the technology itself or which manufacturer I'm buying that technology from, and being able to stay up to date as possible with all these different USB-C, HDMI, DisplayPort, all the Dante, all that kind of stuff, and just be able to respond quicker to the changes in the industry.
Well, it turns the decisions on your hardware to what's the best hardware to meet those needs, to meet those goals of your use case. And you can pick it from a manufacturer that gives you the right level of support, or that gives you, that has a proven hardened product. And maybe there's going to be times where a $99, product from overseas is going to fit the bill exactly. And maybe there's times where your traditional AV vendor's product is going to be the right fit, because you can pick up a phone and call them for support. But you're picking, at that point, you pick the product based on the right product to deliver your goal, not based on the fact that it just has the badge on the front,
Right.
or just based on the fact that it's what you used 3 years ago.
Yep. And from my perspective, I still need to use integrators to do our installs. But what we will essentially do, and I'd love to talk about our network onboarding and stuff like that, but we will leverage these integrators still. They're not going to go away. And our programmers, they'll still be creating device drivers for us to be the go-between between the actual device itself and the virtualized server and that control. But with our scope of work, at least that will be standard enough so that we could do some sort of load balancing between multiple integrators if we had to. And then the back end is just all configured basically by me and the team, whether that's providing the static addresses to the integrator ahead of time to hard code those boxes and then just pretty much plug it into our managed network switches and hit the ground running when they get on site.
So, I think we're painting a very positive picture about this. What are the drawbacks? What are the concerns in going this direction? Ryan, I'll kind of let you kick that off, and I'll kind of bring that around to everybody. Whether it's stuff that we need to learn, these are the gotchas that we need to be worried about, or is this a no-brainer?
Right. So I think one of the gotchas is, frequently mentioned, or one of the, could sneak up on you is your network. You have to be sure that your switching and routing and your internal network is rock solid. And I think most of at least here at Ithaca College, it's at the point where I believe that we can rely on our network to deploy this virtualized control systems and all these endpoints. We have dedicated VLANs needed to do that. You have a concern about like a central point of failure, right, with the server, and I think that perhaps maybe even there's other servers out there where you can pretty much just click a button and it'll create a redundancy, and we'll eventually get to that point where we'll just have redundant virtual servers providing the control. Doing load balancing, all that sort of stuff if necessary, and round robin DNS, and but still you have to learn that stuff. It's almost as if I'm and it's been talked about before, but I am IT and AV, combined a bit. I do. We have about 50 managed network switches that we deployed with our network engineers, but they're considered audiovisual switches. You need that skill set to be able to understand how those are deployed, configured, onboarded, the troubleshooting of that technology. And I would say that one of the best things your support group or other people could get is probably like start off with a Network Plus or CCNA to try to get to the place where you can actually support this type of technology if you did decide to start to deploy it. And on the back end, I think that at least here at the college, you can take credits. I'm thinking about taking Python, a Python class, entry level, and Java, and see how that Java integrates with HTML5. Those three things, you get a Network Plus and start to understand how all this functions together, then you'll be in an excellent position to start to leverage these solutions.
Thanks. Dave, so from a service provider standpoint, are we there yet? Are we ready to take this on?
Well, I mean, in some cases, I don't know we have a choice. We're getting there. From my perspective, there's a lot of good that can come from it, but we still, in my mind, the edge hardware is the piece that concerns me still. The immediate tendency is to, okay, so, I can talk IP to a number of devices. Great. Well, as someone who's been there on a lot of that, not all of our manufacturers have really hardened the IP communication on their devices, even in this day and age. So that's why you'll still see in a lot of designs where RS-232 hasn't gone away yet. Again, we'll get there, but we're not necessarily quite there. The other thing I've seen is a tendency real quick to jump to, okay, we need to make a conversion, a box that goes from IP to relays or IP to serial control or whatever. And there's a lot of options out there. Again, some of them are from companies that we deal with and know and have support channels with today, and some aren't. And so we just need to be cautious about the products we choose and make sure that we as the support provider and the integrator have confidence in our ability and our reputation being staked on the performance of all of those boxes. Because at the end of the day, if anything in the system doesn't work right, well, that's on me, and it's my reputation behind it. And so we just need to be conscious of it. The other thing I look at is the skill set of the programmers. Ryan was, talking about expanding his skill sets. And I think as programmers who've been doing this a long time, I think all of us will agree there's more for us to learn. And quite often with a lot of our manufacturers that are starting to offer up virtualized control options, it's not necessarily the software and the way we've written programs in the past that we can continue with. We have to learn new directions or new skills. And again, that's not a bad thing, but it's something we need to be aware of. And I know myself, working for an integrator, we're looking forward as to each day, well, what do we need to start to expand the skill set of our team? And it can't just be one person on the team that learns a new language or learns to support this new virtualized control system, because what happens when they go on vacation? What happens when they call in sick for the day? Heaven forbid they get hit by a bus. We need the entire team to be able to adapt and shift, maybe not all at once, but we need, if we're going to make the commitment to go this route, and I think we have to, all of us need to really look at it as how we're going to go there. We need to all up our game. We need to all expand and change our skill sets a little so that we can do it efficiently, so that we can deliver the quality result to our customers.
So, Rich, I'll end with you with some words of wisdom. I think that we've clarified, and it's very encouraging that programmers and software and this increased value and it really is a different rule of the game here. So, where do we get help? It's no longer, I think, calling the manufacturer and having them walk through things with you. This, we're kind of playing in I guess, for lack of a better term, the real world of IT. We don't hear you.
Sorry, I was just so excited. I didn't want to burst in. It's the Wild West for us all over again. I mean, we saw it 25 years ago. We were making it up as we went along, and we're kind of going along this way again. I mean, I look at it this way. About 8 years ago, almost to the day, I introduced for the first time on the West Coast the iPad as a controller at the San Francisco Decorator Showcase in 2010. Only 8 years ago. And we've moved so quickly since then. Is this going to immediately happen in the control industry next year? No. But from a preparation standpoint, it's going to move at a much more accelerated rate than we've been used to. And that's an exciting thing, and it's a scary thing. Some companies aren't going to adapt, and those companies are going to cease to be here. What will happen is the companies who embrace it, and like Dave was saying, are saying, we need to plan for it now. We need to build our infrastructure up. They're going to be the ones that are going to pick up the jobs because they're going to get the call from the technology managers and from the schools and from these corporations saying, you know what, the company we've had for 10 years, not around. And we still have all of these things that we need to service. And again, we saw it in the residential side good 6 years ago, where all of a sudden, they just couldn't keep up because the market changed around them. And we're seeing that. And so the first reaction is, oh my gosh, the sky's falling. It's not falling. It's an opportunity. But you have to be willing to very surgically look at where your flaws are as a company and start eliminating those and build yourself up. And so it's an opportunity for young. Why do you think, the IT industry is a young industry, and that's part of it as well. There's lots of really young, smart guys out there who are working in organizations like schools and corporations who are within the next 5 to 8 years are going to be moving to those C-level positions. We got to remember that as well. And so when you start working with them, when you start educating them, when you start partnering with them, as those organizations grow, as their responsibilities grow, you're maintaining that partnership with them. It's no different than we did 20 years ago. It's just at a much faster pace. And it's exciting. I mean, again, you can really look at it as it's the end of your company or the birth of a new company. But if you stay static, the answer is going to be pretty self-evident.
Well, I think that's great advice, and I couldn't agree more. So that's a good way for us to wrap this one up. Want to thank everybody for being a part of this show. This is a very, I think, enlightening topic, and hopefully one that the audience will value, and I'm sure it will spur some conversations to come. Thank you, Dave, for being here today. Dave Hatz from AVI Systems. How can people get either in touch with you or learn more about AVI Systems?
So avisystems.com is probably the best spot to learn all about AVI, where, our nationwide presence and where we can help you out. If you want to talk to me, I'm on the Twitter at Dave Hatz AVI, on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me pretty much anywhere, but really avisystems.com is where you want to go.
Excellent. Thanks. Ryan, hopefully this is a good experience for you. How can people get in touch with you and learn more about things that you're doing at Ithaca College?
Yeah, if anyone's out there, I'd love to chat about the future of virtualized control. You can reach me at Brightlight AV on Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn at just Ryan Engels, and my email here is rengels@ithaca.edu. Thank you.
That's RENGELS, correct?
That's right. Yep.
Thanks. And last but not least, another great show. Rich, thanks for being here with me. How can people get in touch with you and learn more about what you're doing?
Well, any complaints, please email me at davehatz@avisystems.com.
I thought Tim gets those.
But you can find me on the interwebs. Type in my name. And I'm just going to have to start getting UncleRichie.com somewhere. I got to track it down. But you can find me on the Twitters at rfregosa. You can find us at fregosadesign.com, or obviously here, or occasionally creeping over at Resi Week with my good friend Matt Scott.
You should at least try Uncle Richie on Twitter or something like that.
I should, and then all 6 of my followers might be able to find me.
Stay tuned for our next show. With that, my name is Steve Greenblatt. Thanks for being here. You can reach me on social media at Steve Greenblatt, my company Control Concepts at controlconcepts.net. But most importantly, please go visit AVNation.tv and show some of your appreciation to the underwriters that help to make this program and the others on the network possible. They also encourage you to tune in to AV Week, Resi Week. As Rich said, he's a frequent contributor there. And some of the other shows that I personally listen to and recommend, I really like the ITAV show, Connected, and one of my growing favorites now is the AV Profession, that talks about the business of the AV industry and has a lot of interesting insight. Also, please, while you're at the AVNation website, or if you download our show from iTunes, please leave us a review, a comment. Let us know you're out there. Let us know what you want to hear, and we'd love to hear from you. So with that, that's all we have for a State of Control today. Thanks for being with us.